Welcome to the Road Forward podcast. I'm Flint. I'm here today with Nic. If you've been listening to the show, we are the two hosts. We thought we would put our heads together today. We both watched this John Oliver bit. This is April 6th, as of this recording. They came out 2 days ago. And John Oliver does this, if you haven't seen it, does this really funny bit about the trucking industry and how it has all these systematic problems, and brings up this idea that maybe there's actually not a driver shortage, which I think we've heard on the show here several times from several guests. You know, everybody says, oh, I can't recruit drivers, I can't retain drivers, there's a driver shortage, and it's felt that way for a really long time. And John Oliver had this way of, making this very obviously hilarious, but underlining the point that maybe there's actually not a shortage. People just don't want to work in the industry, which I thought was something worth jumping on the podcast and talking about our reactions to, and kind of comparing that to what we've heard from our guests. So, Nic, what do you think? Is there actually a driver shortage?
Well, I have to, like you say, this is Nic with the Road Forward podcast. Glad to be back on here. Thanks for jumping on, Flint, with me and introducing us. I don't know if there is. I think we heard from several operators that the driver shortage may be more of an exodus, as it were, just because of some of the conditions. I remember in particular that Dominic Cavello, when I spoke with him, mentioned a lot about how some of the requirements of the drivers have increased, and if they haven't seen the corresponding increase in incentives and pay, then they've left because it's not a great job anymore like it once was. I remember particularly he mentioned this was a well-respected job. This was an honest living. It could feed a family of four, those type things. And if we're not creating a professional job like it was in years past, then what's the reason to stick around? Moreover, and if we're not doing that while we're demanding more of our drivers, and now drivers, they're taking risks out on the road every day. They're getting put in the penitentiary if there's an accident, being held liable, and they always have been. But there's a lot of risk there to take on from a driver perspective, and if the hours are longer and the work's harder and more detailed, more demanding with some of the requirements that you have to have, and you're getting paid less, you're not getting paid to sit in the truck, then why are you here?
Well, and I think we also heard from Wayne and Encino Logistics, who said we got to stop the dwell time problem, right? This idea that we show up to a shipper ready to pick up a load, we then wait 6, 7, 8 hours, whatever the number is. That amount of time oftentimes is unpaid to the driver, right? Like we're just sitting here twiddling our thumbs, waiting on some guy, to load us. Which is like completely absurd. I mean, look, I'm a professional. If I spent 8 hours of my work week sitting around waiting on somebody, I would be furious, right? No way I'm going to continue the career path that I'm on if my time is valued at that rate, which is essentially free, right? And to your point, you're taking all kinds of risk on the road. This is a 70-hour-a-week job. There's a lot of expectations. I think it used to be like in the old days, like let's call it the 70s, 80s, there was a certain amount of freedom to being a truck driver, right? Like you kind of built your own schedule, you built your own route, you hold the loads that you wanted to load, at least to some extent. And that is no longer the case. Like you don't have the freedom that you used to have. You have all of the regulations, you have all of the unpaid waiting time. You can't have like all the bad things and none of the good things. And so I think an interesting question is like this problem, I think, extends beyond the carrier. It's more of a systematic industry-wide problem, and we've heard it time and time again on the show. So how do we fix this problem in the industry? Because if we don't have trucks, like, let's face it, I can't get right now. My daughter's lactose intolerant. We can't get lactose-free milk. It's not on the shelves. It's not there, right?
Well,
So
that's a really specific example, lactose-free milk. I'm reminded of what Keith Sable told me about something that's a lot more of a basic commodity, steel, and try to haul steel from Birmingham to Atlanta or Montgomery, very short trip, but try to put it on the rail, and it takes weeks to get there. Takes weeks to get it invoiced and back around, if you can even add in the cost to load it and unload it, by all the special requirements it takes to rail something. So trucks are absolutely valuable. Lactose-free milk certainly is a staple in our modern consumer society, but without steel, we don't have a country.
well, yeah,
You know.
gosh, your grocery store shelves are bare. You can't. It's almost like something out of an Ayn Rand novel, right? Like, everybody that can produce starts leaving the market, and you can't get anything you need. It sounds absurd, right? But if we don't fix this systematic problem in the industry, like, this will only get worse. I don't know pre-COVID how many times I went to the store and I couldn't get what I needed. Now post-COVID, it's like constant, right? It's like, we're just constantly challenged with these supply chain issues, both personally and in business, right? You can't get parts, you can't get anything you need through the supply chain. And I think John Stanley, on one of our first episodes, talked a little bit about this, how there's kind of this race to the bottom for trucking companies, right? So you have all these small carriers out there, your typical small business owner, right? Your typical entrepreneur out hustling, building a business, very focused on revenue, very focused on growing the team, getting the resources that they need to be successful. Sometimes, like, the bigger safety kind of stuff falls to the wayside, which is actually a cost area and is very important to focus on the business. Where then your big carriers that have all those resources, that have all that safety, that have all that overhead, need to charge more for their freight, right? They need a higher rate. And so you always have these, like, small guys undercutting these big guys, but then eventually the small guy goes out of business because he has one accident and he didn't focus on safety, right? And there kind of feels like there's this revolving door. And so John's point was, like, there almost needs to be a baseline in the market. Like, you kind of have to meet some basic criteria to operate in the market. And I don't know if that's something government should do or government shouldn't do, but I don't know. That was an interesting observation from John.
Just knowing you as long as I have, I'd almost say you're advocating for government regulation, Flint, which is a turn on your normal spiel.
Yeah, I don't know that I am advocating for government regulation. I'm advocating for something to give in the industry. Look, drivers are like our most important resource in transportation, right? You can have all the trucks in the world, you can have all the trailers. Fuel's pretty expensive right now, but, like, if there's nobody to drive the truck, we're not going to get any freight moved.
Sure. Well, and certainly regulation's not the only answer. I think that we would be the first ones to advocate for technology as well that can reduce some of the burden of being able to fulfill these needs, whether it be safety, whether it be operations, management, sales. There's an app for that. And one benefit of I think the I guess post iPhone era is that there really is a smorgasbord of offerings out there that are software as a service, which I know is a four-letter word, but it can benefit business in low-cost ways that can help address some of these issues. Now, there's always the human aspect behind that. And so it's really change management, I'd say. Once you find your software, you have to implement it. You got to get your team on board with it. And that's where I think if it's not done the right way, a lot of these drivers just feel like, oh, this is one more thing I have to do. I already do everything I do every day. I've got to get up and get these these loads delivered, everything's involved with that. I'm sitting around in the truck. I got to wait 8 hours, get the truck unloaded, because we're lined up here. Now I got to do one more thing after I've done all my ELDs, after I've done all of my inspections, safety checks, everything else I have to do. You're asking me to do this one more technology, and I think that's where really any industry experiences pushback. Or it's the straw that broke the camel's back. But if I think if operators can harness some of these technologies, which are they're in the marketplace now. It's not anything that's yet to be invented. We've got AI capabilities that can look at video. We've got smart lane monitoring so that we're not careening in anybody. Or smart systems for
I think though, Nick, I just want to interject. I think too often drivers look at technology as if it is, like you said, one more thing to do, or it's a negative aspect. And we've heard several times on the show that investing in safety and positioning it correctly with your drivers could actually be a retention tool, right? My company invests in giving me the tools that I need to be successful to get me home safe at night. It doesn't have to be approached, and I think part of this is from the ELD mandate. All of a sudden the federal government, let's go back to federal government again, said, by the way, now you're going to start doing this. And everybody from the carrier to the shipper to the driver was like, well, this sucks, right? And I think that stigma has kind of stuck around with technology, when maybe that shouldn't be the case, right? And we could actually use these tools to improve our business, to make our drivers' lives easier, to empower our drivers to own more of their workflow, to actually at the end of the day have more freedom, which I think is kind of a cool idea, right? If all of a sudden drivers felt like there was more to the job than just checking down the boxes and going from point A to point B and waiting. And obviously technology doesn't do that itself. It's one tool. A hammer is great. If you never swing it, it never drives a nail, right?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you. It seems as if the kind of broad regulation of something, mandating anything, takes the fun out of it. So certainly, just saying, hey, go from paper to computers was a difficult transition. I think I've heard that several times, from some of these older operators. Now that we've gotten used to it, I don't know if we've gotten used to it though. I think probably more what happened is the technology got better, and by the time it got better, now it's been easier for us to work with, and so we don't have to go through all of the heartache that we had to the first go round when the ELDs that we were using were glorified,
time trackers.
Word documents.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. They weren't smart at all. They weren't intuitive, and you took 3 clicks to do anything. So yeah, definitely mandates. It's a blunt tool. I think it can get done what you want, but it definitely has some collateral damage.
But I'm
in the seams.
I'm really curious. So, Nick, where do you think the actual problem is in the industry? Because this is something I've really struggled with. Right, we're all dealing with this retention problem. There's all this new technology on the horizon, yet at the same time, it feels like that all the tools and the resources are out there, but the feeling in the industry is that it's getting harder and harder and harder. So, where is the problem in the industry?
Well, I think that we really need to take a look at some of our costs breakdown, in shipping. I think that when you look at, I read some recent numbers, something like when we look at what are the costs that go into a transporter, 39% of it's in fuel and 24% of it's in drivers. Those are the top 2 costs of to run an operating company. And fuel, obviously it goes up, it goes down. We have taxes associated with it, but we all kind of see it as a necessary evil. And I think because of the variability there, some of the drivers gotten squeezed, even though it's, I mean, honestly, more important than the fuel in a lot of cases. I mean, this is a human business. It's humans moving things from point A to point B with our technology. So hopefully, fuel costs will go down, whether it be through commodities or whether we have, new technologies that don't rely on fuels. But I think we can't ever go wrong in investing in the driver. If the core of the business is somebody has to take it from point A to point B. And so I think investing in them in terms of a good job to work in, investing in them in terms of the tools that they have at their disposal.
I mean, Nick, isn't this I'm sorry to interrupt you, but isn't this become a competitive problem, right? Because it's easy to say let's invest in our drivers, but if everybody doesn't invest in our drivers, I mean, let's assume everybody's buying fuel, right? Trucks get, I don't know, 4 to 8 miles a gallon. Everybody's going to get roughly the same, right? We're all kind of on the same level playing field. Like the driver expense is a big variable, and if I as a carrier say, okay, I'm gonna double my driver pay today, that then has to be reflected in my rates to stay profitable. But if you, on the other hand, say, well, he just doubled his pay for drivers, I'm not gonna increase mine, or I'm gonna increase it by 10%. All of a sudden, you come and compete with me, your rates are way cheaper, right? Even though my retention's better, my safety's probably better, I probably have higher caliber drivers. Like this creates a competitive issue in the market. Like maybe is the problem actually at the shipper level, right? Like this is such a competitive business in the trucking industry. Maybe part of the issue is that the shipper, like the shipper is requiring us to have all this dwell time. The shipper is not choosing the safest carrier, not choosing the carrier who takes the best care of their drivers. Maybe it's the broker, right? Maybe a broker shipper is interchangeable. Like where is the problem? Is it that every carrier has to band together and do exactly the same thing and the entire rate structure has to come up? Or is it shippers are going to have to get better at choosing who they work with based on factors other than financial factors?
Sure, I think probably both, Flint. I'll be real honest with you. The operators I've spoken with that have been successful, that are growing, those are the ones that they're vertically integrated. They're a shipper and a transporter, and so they can mitigate some of these aspects that you're talking about. They can kind of give themselves the choice routes, and they can be more strategic about how things are loaded and unloaded, and they can remove some of those obstacles. Or they're the transporters that have really strong relationships, strong contacts with the shippers, and they're able to maybe charge a little bit more so that they can operate better. But ultimately, the shipper's not looking for the lowest common denominator because they have certain needs that are being met by that transporter.
Yeah, so they found a competitive niche.
They found a competitive niche, right? A secret sauce. Why is a Big Mac and a Whopper? We put them side by side? Some people like the Big Macs. It's got the secret sauce on there, right? It's not just price. I mean, if I just want a burger for a price, I guess there is a customer for that. But most of us pick our favorites because we like that niche. We like what we like.
Right. But I hear you. I agree. And this all comes back to business strategy, right? How do you want to position in the market? Do you want to be the higher cost, high service type provider? Do you want to be the low cost, low service provider? Here's the thing, you probably can't be both, right? I can't, I see some people advertise, we're the high service, low cost. It's like, I don't know how that's going to be very successful for very long, right? It might work for a little while, and then you're probably going to be lying on one of those 2 points at the end of the day. So, finding a niche. I mean, it comes back. It makes me think, is trucking really a commodity business? Is moving stuff from point A to point B? I can do it. You can do it. Jim down the street can do it. We can all do it. How do you think about differentiating yourself in the market? And I think some companies have been really good at this. Like, if you look at food delivery is like a really good example. It's where service actually matters, and probably commodities like think about agricultural feed. Like if it's not there on time, my animals go hungry. Milk might be like another interesting. Like there are certain segments of the market I think that lend themselves really well to needing a higher cost, higher service provider. But perhaps in the general freight world, a dry van is a dry van, a flatbed is a flatbed to some extent, right? And you kind of commoditize your service if you don't find the niche.
Sure, and I think that was a great point that Dominic brought up as well. Was that regulations are sort of broadly, uniformly applied to everybody who has a DOT number and has a box van or a truck, but ultimately it's not bespoke enough to be able to massage these different circumstances. You're right. I mean, a dry van's business is much different from agricultural, commodities. They're apples and oranges.
An oil field,
so
right? That would be another example. Yeah. So Nick, maybe this is where you're going, but has the federal government set us up for disaster with all these regulations that apply to everybody evenly? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Do we need less regulation? Do we need more regulation?
I think I can firmly say the federal government has set us up for disaster.
In more than one way, right?
More than one way, yes. We are headed down the wrong path here, and I hope, Mr. Biden, you are listening to this today when I say we need reform today in trucking. That's my piece. I've said
it. Nick's going to start chanting and rioting and waving a flag here in a moment. That's funny. Yeah, look, right. I don't know what gives, right? I mean, I really struggle to put my finger on exactly where the overall big problem is in the industry. I think a lot of it lies with the shipper. I think too many times carriers don't differentiate themselves, and it becomes a race to the bottom. Ultimately, if this industry is going to be, like, let's face it, stuff is going to continue to move back and forth across the country because we're all going to keep buying stuff, right? The people here are the key to success. If you're a carrier and you're not focused on your people and how you're going to take care of them and building the niche that allows me to retain, recruit, and have good people to move stuff from point A to point B, like, you're setting yourself up for failure.
I think you brought up the oil field, and that's a great segue into where they've always focused on people. I think is in that industry, because your people are the ones who are interacting with your customers more than you, and so if you are going to differentiate yourself with your shippers, with your customers, investing in your people, investing in your drivers, and them representing your brand in the best way possible is really how you're going to do it. I call it the race to the top. It's how do we make this the most professional outfit that we can. You can go out, you can beat the streets, and you can market some more. But what speaks more volumes than showing up with a suit and a briefcase is when your trucks show up on time, and things are done properly, and you're holding your shippers to task, saying, "Hey, I've got the data here. Now, I want to talk to you about this because this is what we need to conduct business in a more streamlined manner." That's where you're going to represent your brand well, and ultimately you're going to make a name for the company and win more business in the marketplace.
And this is like the Southwest model, right? Southwest Airlines, if you look back at history, they made the decision early on strategically to put their employees first. So, like, as a business, right, you can prioritize different things. You say, I'm going to, my shareholders are number one, my customers are number one, my vendors are number one, whatever. In Southwest case, they said, we're going to make our employees number one. They're our number one concern. Everything else is secondary to that. And the strategy behind that was, it's not we don't want to take care of our customers. It's if we take care of our employees will take care of our customers, right? And we will then create more return for shareholders because our customers are happy and they continue to come back, and our employees are happy and they retain, right? Like, this is the Southwest model, and we all know how this went, right? They became phenomenally successful. um, and in a lot of ways stomped the traditional airlines who had kind of approached this as, hey, shareholders first. We're going to cancel flights when they're not full. We're going to take an inch out from between every seat and make literally every passenger completely miserable, but it means we can get one more extra row on the flight, right? So, this is just, it all comes back to strategy. Like, what do you value? What's your niche? How are you going to structure and run your business to align with that strategy?
And I think it doesn't have to be something you really beat yourself over the head with, Flint. I know, you don't have to have an Ivy League business school degree to come up with the best strategy. If you just believe in what you do, and you believe that this is the right route, and it speaks volumes to your employees, your customers. If you just say, sort of earnestly, we value this more than
Yeah,
anything else,
sure.
and you make that known. I mean, that's your strategy. You're going to do it better than other people, because other people, they may not value that above other things, and they may just have it as a check on their box
And you'll be like a
checklist.
magnet, right? You'll attract people that agree with your philosophy.
Correct. Yep. It's standing for something. I think too often in business, people are given all sorts of advice that you need to do this, you need to do this, this add on, and there's no core value. It all comes back to that. What do you believe in as a company, and as the owner, as the operator that's actually projecting that on your company.
Yep. Yeah, that's cool. Well, Nic, this has been a lot of fun. This was kind of a cool recap. I enjoyed the spirited discussion here about how to improve the industry, because I think we got to think about it, right? Like, everybody that's a member of this industry, like, we've got to keep moving forward. So, thanks for doing this.
For sure, and it changes day to day. I think that our problems now, hopefully, will be a thing of the past as we move down the road forward. But ultimately, it's good to talk about it, and it's good to recap everything that I've said here today. Really has been, I think, opinions of those I've talked with as well. Much smarter men than me, much more apt.
Well, hey, if you've enjoyed it, if you agree or disagree, shoot us a text message at 806-642-5380. Would love to hear your comments. And we even have some swag that we are dying to give away. So send your address. If you have not subscribed yet, theroadforwardpodcast.com. Type in your email address there. We'll send you some cool content via email. Go ahead and subscribe wherever you're listening to your podcast. This has been a whole lot of fun. We're thrilled that you spent a few minutes with us today. And remember to keep your eyes on your road forward.